Hello and welcome back to the David67 Celtic News YouTube channel. Back from a wee long weekend break, and I thought today we could do, now that the dust has settled a little bit on the Celtic season, an end of season ratings for all the players who played for Celtic this season. Now, before we crack on with the actual video, please do, if you are new to the channel and you haven't yet subscribed, do consider clicking that subscribe button. As always, there is a like button for those who like the video, and as always, the comment section for those who want to pop it in a wee pleasant, constructive, informative, debating, discussing type of comment. These end of season ratings, entirely my own impressions. Feel free to have your own thoughts and feel free to share them with me and the channel. I fully am aware that I do have my odd biases. Some players I favour more than others, some players maybe I don't like quite so much. However, these are my end of season ratings, and these are a follow on for mid season ratings I did around early January, and so do feel free to have a wee look back to those just to see who's got better, who's got worse, who's gone up in the rankings, who's gone down in the rankings since the mid-season break. Now, there were a few players I thought hadn't really played for enough for Celtic to get a fair rating. Those were the players who played 5 games or less. In this case, that was Bain, who only played 3 games, 1 start, replacing Joe Hart when he was red carded, and a subs appearance replacing Joe Hart when he was red carded, and a very late sub appearance to let Joe Hart go off to his standing ovation. Also playing twice for Celtic this season, Marco Tilio, Rocco Vata, and Sead Haksabanovic, and 1 time each for Karsdorp, who played for us right at the very start of the season before he went off to Celta Vigo, and Mitchell Frame, our very promising left back, left wide midfield player, who played briefly against Feyenoord and actually did very well, but felt they didn't actually play enough games to merit a ranking. There were some players who left us in the mid-season break, and so they retained their rankings. I gave them in the mid-season ranking video. So David Turnbull got C minus, Lee Labada a C minus, Mikey Johnson a D, and Nat Phillips an F. Turnbull, Abada, and Phillips all likely never to play for Celtic again. Mikey Johnson back from a very successful loan spell at West Brom, uncertain whether he's going back into Brendan Rodgers' plans or whether he'll be transferred back to West Brom, who are said to be keen to buy him, with fees of 5, 6, even 8 million being discussed for Mikey Johnston. So none of those 4 players changed their rankings from mid-season, as none of the 4 played for us after the mid-season midwinter break. Now, moving on to 2 players I graded as Ds for their whole season performance. First of which is Stephen Welsh. Now, Stephen Welsh did have a number of sub appearances, a few starts. I thought in all of his appearances, apart from his sub appearance against Aberdeen at the start of the season, he looked poor, out his depth, made a lot of mistakes, looked really nervous, and was quite a liability in defence. He does seem to be one of Brendan Rodgers' favourite players. Rodgers seems desperate to get him into the squad, on the bench, and start him when he can. And I think Stephen Welsh could well be with us for the longer term, as Rodgers seems much more keen to force Nawrocki and Lagerbielke and Kobayashi out the squad and out the club. So D for Stephen Welsh. D also for Alexandro Bernabe. He's, of course, is away off on loan for the duration of 2024. I doubt he's actually going to come back and play for us. He did have a number of games for us at left back when Greg Taylor was injured, also a few left back sub appearances. Burnaby also complete liability at left back, very often out of position, very rarely able to defend. Capably gave away a bad goal against Kilmarnock that proved to be an equaliser with terrible back post defending. Burnaby probably is at his best when he's playing further up the pitch, left sided midfield and even left wing, but we never really have tried him in that position. So a D for Burnaby. C minus for Odin Tiago Holm. I don't think Holmes really had a terribly good chance to show his skills at Celtic. He spent quite a lot of the season out injured or ill. He had a few brief appearances in the Champions League, got himself sent off in the first game against Feyenoord, scored his first Celtic goal against Bucky in the Scottish Cup just after the winter break, but really never got himself into terribly many matchday squads, and only the odd bit of good play and brilliance from home, so a C minus for him. Give him a C to Daniel Kelly. He came into the side after the winter break when there had been a number of injuries and also players away in the Asian Cup. And he actually had a few good games for Celtic, especially his game against Dundee, where he scored a beautiful second half goal. And he was on the bench several times over the duration of the season. He was voted the Academy Player of the Year, and currently he and Celtic and his agents are in negotiations for a new contract. So C for Daniel Kelly, and I've given the C plus to O, our South Korean centre forward. Didn't play terribly much in the second half of the season. Came back from the Asian Cup, never really got himself back into the team or even onto the bench terribly often, and he very much dropped beneath Adam Ida in the pecking order. I see O going off on loan next season to one of our fellow Scottish Premiership teams, or maybe an English Championship team. I think what he needs is to play every week, week in, week out as a starter, and I think he could turn into the player that we and the Celtic backroom staff think he can be. So C plus for O, our South Korean centre forward. Moving on to those I gave a B minus to. B minus for Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor, rather poor in defence, gave away a lot of goals. He and Scales didn't really form a very good partnership. Very often, Taylor's lack of height and lack of ability in the air, catching us out, giving away goals such as against Aberdeen in the Cup semi-final. Multiple times he was beaten for pace or beaten by tricky wide players. And so a B minus for Greg Taylor. I do think he is at his best going forward, moving into that inverted fullback role into midfield and into the final third. And several times his crosses and delivery did get us goals, such as against Motherwell with Adam Ida's header. B minus also for Gustav Lagerbielka and Mike Nawrocki. I think they both are very good central defenders. I think they need time and a regular place in the Celtic side to show their skills. Doesn't seem as if Brendan Rodgers is keen to give either of them a real chance at Celtic, and is keen to get them both out the door. I think personally that Lagerbielka and Nawrocki are currently our second and third best central defenders, ahead of Scales, ahead of Kobayashi, ahead of Welsh. And I think what they both need is a bit of time and a regular partnership with Carter Vickers, and a regular alternating coming off the bench also for them. So B minus also for our two wide players, Nicholas Kuhn, who joined us in the winter transfer window, and Yang, our young South Korean wide player. Both of them, I think, showed good flashes of brilliance. Yang had an especially good game as a sub against Motherwell. He and Alistair Johnston did seem to form a good partnership. Yang did have quite a number of very disappointing sub appearances, very disappointing starts, was very inconsistent. Nicholas Kuhn, I think we could say the same thing for him. Did come on in his debut match and was given a goal when his deflected shot did score, did several times set up nice goals with his cross coming in, cutting on his left foot, and of course scored the vital first goal against Aberdeen in the Cup semi-final. But both of them, I think, could do better. I think both of them are worth persisting next season. Whether Yang stays in our squad and plays as a regular sub, an occasional starter, or whether Yang may be more likely get sent off on loan to a St Mirren, an Aberdeen, a Dundee, United, I don't know, somewhere where he's going to start week in, week out and gain better confidence and consistency in the team. And so B minus for Taylor, Lagerbielke, Nawrocki, Kuhn and Yang. Now, three players I gave Bs to: Paulo Bernardo, Tomoki Iwata, and Anthony Ralston. Anthony Ralston really didn't do anything wrong in the times he did come on as a sub for Alistair Johnston, nor in the few times he started at the start of the season when Johnson was out injured. I think Ralston did nothing wrong. Doesn't really set the heather on fire, but he does give a good bit of height in Celtic central defence, and he does have the ability to get forward and set up goals and crosses. And of course, he was the key factor in our 3-2 winner against St Mirren, the last game of the season, where his wonderful cross to Lewis Palmer gave us the winner that day. So a B for Anthony Ralston. B's also for Tomoki Iwata, Paulo Bernardo. Both of them were kind of in and out the sides, sometimes starting when other players were out injured, quite often coming on as sub. Paulo Bernardo rather inconsistent. He had a really good spell around Christmas time, scoring against Dundee on Boxing Day, and then that wonderful goal against Rangers on the 30th, and then kind of faded away in the early part of the winter months, and then came back playing better in the spring months, and of course was the key factor in our Cup final winning goal with that wonderful swerving shot that Butland couldn't save, and Ida tucked away the rebound. Not sure whether Paulo Bernardo was coming back to us as a permanent transfer. I think if we could get him for around 5-6 million, that would be a good purchase. And I do think with time, another season or two, he's going to turn into a very, very good player for Celtic. But I think this needs another season or so just to bed down completely in Scottish football and get more consistency and maturity. Tomoki Iwata does a lot of things that tend to go unnoticed, mops things up, links the play, clears up in defence, gets the ball out of defence, out wide, links up with the midfielders, doesn't really get forward terribly often. And one of the best things he did all season was scoring what turned out to be the winning penalty in the Cup semi-final in the penalty shootout. Again, Tomoki Iwata, I think, a player vital to the Celtic squad, covers defensive midfield, central midfield, covers central defence, right back, could even play at left back in an emergency, and I think Tomoki Iwata is the kind of player you need in your squad. Versatility, happy to be on the bench, and when he does come in, Neil always does a good job. So B's for Paulo Bernardo, Tomoki Iwata and Anthony Ralston. B pluses for Liam Scales, Alistair Johnston, Kyogo, Rio Tati and Louise Palmer. Liam Scales, I think, did fade away a wee bit in the second half of the season. Quite a number of very shaky defensive performances, especially the Cup semi-final where he was at fault for the second and third Aberdeen goals. His distribution remains rather disappointing and nervy. To be fair, His defensive performances did improve in the last few games of the season, and I thought he was pretty solid in the last 2 or 3 league matches, and also gave a good performance in the cup final against Rangers. So B plus for Liam Scales. Luis Palma, B plus as well. He had an especially good start to the season. He was our second top assister and third top scorer in that first half of the season. Then seemed to get some problems with injury and fatigue, and was sort of travelling back and forward to Central America for international matches. Died away in the sort of the middle third quarter of the season, and then did come back, I thought, with a few good performances in the fourth quarter of the season, scoring a nice goal against St Mirren and scoring one of the vital penalties in the penalty shootouts. And I think Luis Palma next season is going to be a very important player for us as a regular starter out wide and a regular sub coming on as an impact player. So B plus for him. B plus for Rio Hatate. He was in and out of the side quite a lot with injury. When he did come back to the side, he did make a real improvement to the midfield. His performances were a bit inconsistent. Some great performances, some poor performances, and some average performances. And so I've gone with just a B plus. But I think he is next season a player who definitely has the potential to be an A plus player for us next season in midfield. Alistair Johnston, I think gives us a very strong right-sided right back role, and good leadership. I think he is a player who's becoming more and more important in the dressing room. I think he's a future vice captain or captain of Celtic as Callum McGregor and Carter Vickers, etc., leave or get that bit older. I think Alistair Johnston sometimes is beaten for pace, sometimes isn't the best positioned in the right back role. However, I think his contributions in the final third are very important for Celtic. I think his ability to get the ball out of defence into midfield and to the wide players is also very important. And he is a confident player and plays with that bit more fire, aggression, and passion, which I love to see in Celtic players. Kyogo, I gave a B plus to as well. He ended up even equal top scorer with Matt O'Reilly. He did play all 50 games for Celtic this season. He was the only player who played all 50 of our 50 games this season. At times he looked rather tired, fatigued, mentally and physically. And I think when that happened, his performances dropped. That's why I think next season we should have a couple of additional strikers to take some of the weight of the role off of Kyogo. I think if he's fresh for every game, or most games, I think we're going to get him back up into the mid 20s and 30s in terms of his end of season goal tally. Also, if the delivery from midfield, the wide players and our fullbacks overlapping improves, I think also Kyogo's goal tally will improve next season. So B plus for Kyogo, partly due, I think, to him being overplayed, and also partly that the supply to him wasn't as good as it could have been or should have been. Grand, so that was B's for Scales, Kyogo, AJ, Hatate, and Luis Palma. A minuses for Callum McGregor, James Forrest, Dyson Maida, and Cameron Carter Vickers. I think with McGregor, he had a lot of good performances for Celtic. I think he especially led the way against Rangers in those vital 5 games this season. I think he did struggle with injury and, of course, missed quite a number of games through injury. Took a couple of games to get himself back into top form, but was very much a key factor in the lead into the title with the cup semi, the cup final, plus the 5 post-split games. So A minus for Callum McGregor. Similarly, James Forrest really came into his own from the cup semi-final onwards. Was a key factor in that game. key factor in several of the post-split fixtures. Didn't have the best of the cup finals, and early in the season kind of scored here and there, some good sub appearances. Didn't really do that well with his earlier starts, but end of the season when the chips were down and the going got tough, Forrest very much stepped up. So an A minus for him. A minus also for Dyson Maida. Again, he had some very key performances against Rangers. Scored the first goal in the 3-3 draw. Tormented Tavernier, the Rangers captain, the whole way through the season. One of Maida's key factors against Rangers is keeping Tavernier back in the defensive third, which keeps Tavernier away from the zones he's often better playing in. Maida scored some vital goals in our cup run, the hat-trick against Livingston, the goal against St Mirren, and chipped in throughout the season with some goals in other games. Still doesn't need to improve his final ball, and if so, I think we would have a great player on our hands. We have to remember that primarily prior to him coming to Celtic, and when he plays internationally for Japan, he plays through the middle as a main striker, and so I'm going to let him off with his delivery from the left wing or the right wing not being up to standard. If he keeps on playing the way he does against Rangers and chips in with regular goals and improves his final ball, cross and pass, I think we're going to have a brilliant player on our hands. And Cameron Carter-Vickers, I gave an A minus to as well. He was kind of in and out the side early on with injury, and I think that was a reason that he was quite inconsistent. However, when he did come back into the team from the midwinter break spell onwards, he got better and better and better, and some very, very key performances throughout the second half of the season. And that's why I bumped him up to the A minus. The A minus even probably deserves an A, but the performances early in the season, where he did make quite a number of mistakes and didn't look his best, kept him at an A minus for me. A's for Joe Hart and Adam Ida. Adam Ida, I think, surprised us all when he came into our club in the winter transfer window as a loan signing. I think most of us were underwhelmed. However, he scored 9 goals for us, scored the vital winner in the cup final, scored 2 goals against Hibs, including an added time penalty. He came on against Motherwell when we were struggling and led us to a 3-1 win, and scored some vital late goals throughout the season for us. 5 of his 9 goals for us were from the 85th minute onwards, and so goals in that part of the game tend to win you games or get you draws, and for that reason I gave Ida an A, and I personally would love to see him back at Celtic next season as one of 3 main strikers, all playing on a rotation, coming off the bench, starting some games on the bench, other games, etc. Whether that gets over the line, I'm not certain, but I would like to see Ida back at Celtic, and I think he's a player who, with regular games at the top level and good coaching, will get better and better for Celtic and for Ireland internationally. Joe Hart, I gave an A to. Thought the first half of the season Joe Hart was a bit disappointing. He seemed to get better and better after he decided he was going to retire at the end of the season, and in the second half of the season, from the winter break onwards, I think he was probably Celtic's star player, very consistent, a lot of great saves, great leadership, and I think was a very large factor in us coming through to winning the double when at some points in the season it looked like we were going to struggle to win any trophies at all. Sad to see Joe Hart go, but I think for him it's the right time in terms of his career, his family, and his future plans. But I'm sure he'll be back at Celtic Park on a very regular basis as a pundit and a guest and as an ambassador to the club. And finally, player of the season, Matt O'Reilly, gave him an A+. Matt O'Reilly, excellent in the first half of the season, top for goals and top for assists. Did seem to have a bit of a poor spell in the third quarter of the season. Didn't seem to play quite so well in and around the end of the transfer window and the weeks after that. Then, much the same as McGregor and Forrest and Hart, when we got to the vital last 2 cup games and last 5 league matches, he turned in lots and lots of great performances. Didn't have the best of the cup final appearances, but he was very good in the semi final and very good in most of the post split games, and ended top for assists and equal top of the goal scoring charts for Celtic, and very much for me deserved player of the season and an A+ rating. Hopefully he stays with us at least to the end of the Champions League campaign, but I do fear he's going to be off to pastures new early in the summer transfer window. So that finishes off my end of season ratings for all the players that played for Celtic. Do feel free, if you enjoyed the video, to click the like button. If you haven't yet subscribed, do click the subscribe button. And as always, do feel free to pop your comments in the comment section, as I'm sure some of you may well have different ratings and different opinions on Celtic's players. So until tomorrow, goodbye and hail, hail.